We're back after the bye week, and Colorado held its weekly press conference leading up to the Kansas State game. Started out with athletic director Rick George addressing the media, and as uncertain as the landscape is with college football right now, Rick George and his staff are trying to get a pulse and be proactive. I think that's one of the things he learned from just NIL is that we got to be ready to go when this gets implemented. Did you have any other takeaways from his meeting with us?
Yeah, it's interesting because at the time they were getting some criticism when NIL was pretty new about kind of being behind the eight ball, and they kind of defended themselves that they weren't. They were at the forefront. But I think they've learned that they weren't. And Rick George today he said it several times. He's like, yeah, we were a little late to the party in that, and we've learned from that. And so, certainly it's been a changing landscape, and it's been tough for a lot of schools in different ways. And so I think they've learned from it. I think that they're trying to get a handle on things. But I think once you get a handle on something else changes in college sports. And so that's what's difficult. And he talked about just the difficulty of his job is so much more than it was 5 years ago. And I can't imagine being in a job like that. Like us having to keep up with it from this perspective is one thing, but trying to keep up from it, from his office up there, no thanks.
Yeah, not to make this whole video about NIL, but they really were at the forefront in terms of putting guys' brands out there, women as well. It was student athletes, let's get your brand out there. Mm-hmm. I don't think Rick George and this athletic department anticipated that it was going to become the Wild Wild West. Rick George was on a committee to try to put up guardrails when NIL came in. The NCAA decided to punt on that. So that's where I give them a little bit of leeway, is they were trying to do the right thing. It was being used as an incentive other places, and that's kind of the way things have transpired. Now we're hoping with this settlement in the NCAA moving forward, there can be a little bit more direction. But right now, it just is not all that clear.
Yeah, and you going back to then, again, it's like there was a lot of pushback from CU on collective and things like that. They didn't want – they're like, we don't want that. That's kind of pay for play. And there was pushback from them. But over time you realize we better get a collective, and we better get a lot of money in that collective. And so they've embraced that. That's what they were slow on. But, yeah, you hope CU is, in the mix. There's a lot of talk of the Super Leagues, things like that, and that's where CU wants to be positioned to be in those. And so you hope that what they're doing right now kind of gets them in that area.
I think the SEC is going to try to prevent the real growth that college football needs going forward, because they are the haves right now. There's no incentive for the SEC, and I guess you could throw the Big Ten in there as well. And I think that's really kind of the issue that's going forward is you don't have people that are on the same page. And so it makes you a little bit pessimistic about the future of college football, but then you get to Saturday and you see the product on the field, and I guess I'm biased, but to me, it's the most entertaining sports product out there, college football. And so Colorado is getting prepared for their next game against Kansas State. And Coach Prime was asked about Dylan Edwards returning here. And he said, I didn't realize they're the Dylan Edwards now. Come on, this is Kansas State coming to town. I don't think anybody around here harbors bad feelings towards Dylan Edwards. His father played for Kansas State, and it's kind of worked out okay for them in their backfield. We got a chance to talk to Dallin Hayden as well today. As long as those guys can keep coming along, especially that Dylan's not a four-down back, right? And so I think they're okay at that position, and hopefully folks aren't too mean to him at Folsom Field on Saturday.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of reception he gets. Coach Prime was very quick to point out that, look, we've never said anything bad about these guys that left. I wish them well. The ones that annoy him are the ones that turn around and kind of fire shots on the way out. And he goes, Dylan never did that. And he goes, I have respect for him for that. He's known the Edwards family for a long time. And so to me, it would have been surprising if Dylan Edwards had done that on the way out. And so, that's where, you would think that maybe Buff fans give him some love in that regard. And that that they see that's a situation that, that's home, right? And that's where his dad went, things like that. And there was no barbs thrown at CU. And so, it'll be interesting. I liked talking to him when he was here. He's a good young player. I'm excited to see him play again. But like Coach Prime said, I just hope he doesn't have a good game against us.
Yeah. We also talked to Chidozie Nwankwo. They have a tough task, Colorado's defensive front, because Avery Johnson can run the ball. Giddens is arguably the top back in the conference this year. Talked about Dylan Edwards. That's really the strength of this football team. And Chris Kleiman's, comes from NDSU, and they're going to want to run the football. This is going to be a physical football game.
Yeah, for sure. More so than we saw even against UCF, which obviously was a run-first offense. But, I think one thing I liked about the way CU played against UCF is that, because their corners are so good, they can put Travis and DJ, on an island and say, we're going to go after the run. And that's what they did really well against UCF. I think they can do the same thing against Kansas State because Kansas State does not have that dynamic passing game. And so I think that's going to allow them to put more people in the box and have a better shot. Like, I still think Kansas State's going to get their chunk plays, and they're going to still have some yards, but because that's what they do. But I think that in a way, to me, it sort of plays into CU's defense. Now, they haven't done great against running quarterbacks, and Avery Johnson might be the best they've seen. But I think that the way CU's defense is setting up right now, this is a good team to play. That's not a dynamic passing attack.
And this is going to be a big game for some of those guys like Wonkwo and Vonta Bentley and Nakai Hill-Green. From an NFL scout standpoint, this is the type of matchup you want to see those guys really excel. If they can do something similar to what they did against UCF, a lot of those guys are really going to start to see, I think, their pro prospects kind of rise here.
Yeah, a guy like Shane Cokes as well is one that Coach Prime has mentioned several times. He's a pro. This is a chance to prove it. You're right. I mean, this is a really good test for the front seven, which we've seen. I think that's one of the biggest differences in this team this year is the play of the front seven. They've been so much better. Well, this is a good test for that. You got a couple more of those coming up too. With the Utah. If Oklahoma State can get right with Ollie Gordon, then they're in that mix too. But this is a big one.
Coach Prime did confirm that Shiloh Sanders is back in the mix, and there should be no controversy there. If Shiloh Sanders is healthy, he should definitely be out there starting for the Colorado Buffaloes. Yeah. He will at times make some chances, take some risks here and there, but the good far outweighs any of kind of those risks that Shiloh Sanders might take as a tackler or a guy trying to make big plays out there. Coach Prime did say that Carter Stoutmeyer will be part of some packages, and so he'll be part of the mix as well. But I think Shiloh Sanders and Cam Selman-Craig, that duo, we've been waiting to see those guys out there together, and it just hasn't really worked out so far this season because of injuries. And I'm anxious to see, how those guys can come up again against a run-based team, and maybe you don't want them to have more than about 5 tackles in this game because it'd be better if guys closer to the line of scrimmage can do that. But this is a big game for them as well.
Yeah, and you're right. I hadn't thought of it that way, but it's got to be only about 15 plays they've played together this year because Cam got hurt very early in the North Dakota State game. Shiloh gets hurt like it's 6 plays in against Nebraska. So, you like that they're back there, but you're right. You don't want them to have a ton of tackles in this one. I think they're going to just because I think this K-State's rushing attack is pretty good. But hopefully those tackles are closer to the line of scrimmage, and they've made a lot of tackles close to the line of scrimmage as well. So, but it's good to have that duo back, and I'm excited to see what role Carter Stoutmeyer plays because I thought he's played really well in place of Shiloh.
And I think the bye week came at a good time because you don't just look at the first 5 weeks. You got to go back to the fact these guys have been grinding since camp started. Yeah. And so you got to have the right mindset. And we certainly saw Coach Prime try to push the right buttons in that first meeting with the team of, hey, you guys haven't accomplished what we set out to accomplish this year, and you shouldn't be surprised. And that's a great message because they were big underdogs going out to UCF, but I think it was part of the belief in that locker room, and it wasn't a team that looked like they were surprised to be up in that game.
Yeah, I think the belief is growing every week in this team, and I asked Coach Prime this, but it seems like really when they came out of halftime against Nebraska, this has been a different football team since then. And I know, they got a little luck there against Baylor, but for the most part, it's been a different football team since halftime of that game. I think confidence is a huge deal, and you remember last year they went into the bye week off of that just devastating loss to Stanford. I don't think they ever recovered. This year they go to the bye week, coming off of a really nice win against UCF. That's such a different vibe going to the bye week, and so I think it's a great time for a bye, especially with 2 byes this year. I like it that it's after Game 5. You get another one after Week 8. I think if there was only 1 bye, this might be. I'd almost rather have it after 7 or 8 games as opposed to 5. But the fact that there's that second bye in there, I think this is a good time.
All right, we'll see if they can keep the good vibes going. We'll be back with more analysis after tomorrow's practice.